Welcome to the Jeep Life Podcast. We created this podcast to share our enthusiasm for the Jeep life in the Northeast and all over with our fellow Jeepers and friends. We call those people lifers. And welcome to episode number 5. This is kind of interesting. It is in the middle of viral central, if you will. We've all been stuck at home and trying to get out. We're all anxiously wanting to get out. So I wanted to try to do something kind of special with this episode. And unfortunately, my co-host Don has a lot on his plate right now. So he's not able to join me in the studio or via phone, which is, I completely understand. I'm lucky.
I think it's important to mention that he's symptom free, though.
He is symptom free, as far as I know. Yeah. I haven't taken his temperature yet. So as you can hear, I am being joined by a substitute co-host, Mr. Scott Ammerman. He's a staff writer at Quadratec, and I've gotten to know him over the past month or so through a mutual friend, and then just kind of the world expanded with him. It's been an awesome resource for our podcast and for me personally in my life, and just a good dude to hang out with. So it was just the stars aligned for him to come on. And Scott, if you don't mind, just go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. I'm Scott. I have been a staff writer for Quadratec for the last few years. I write a lot of technical articles for them, like installs, product reviews, things of that nature. All of our stuff can be found on the Quadratec channel, which if you go to Quadratec, it's like a little, secret back door. It's like a speakeasy. There's a secret knock. So if you go to quadratec.com/C, that will give you an entrance to that. There's a lot of videos on there. We've got a lot of content, how-to reviews, expert info. Kyle from Off-Road Consulting writes a lot of articles, event reviews, things. There's a lot of stuff there to look. So if you are cooped up in your house right now, it's a good idea to maybe check that out. You can learn a few things, or think of a few things that you maybe haven't thought of. And then we've also got the YouTube channel, which is wildly popular, that has product reviews. That's something you definitely want to subscribe to, because they're coming out with content. When Quadratec is open, they're coming out with new content every week. So you'll get several. So that's something to do. But I live in Pennsylvania, just like you do, Terry, and go all over the place with my Jeep. Do a lot of trail riding, mostly greens, blues, and blacks, and some black reds, and a little more crazy stuff. I like to break it and put it back together again.
Well, that seems to be the story of our Jeepness.
Yep.
Really cool, because Scott now and I both live here in Eastern PA now. You're a little more south than me, but we're still here. Yep. But we've found our way here from the same part of the country. From Middle Tennessee, and shout out to my Middle Tennessee people. I miss you and wish I was there with you. I think I have one of those online right now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, my friend Ken. Looks like he joined.
Get to Lytle Street and take us a picture. That'd be awesome.
That would be great. I think he's in the Franklin area, so it'd be a haul for him.
Not that far.
No, but we'll let him do that for us. So the further we peel back our relationship onion, we figure out the more we have in common, and I think it's pretty good that you and I've been able to get to know each other. And
absolutely.
I look to you as an encyclopedia for all things Jeep. And you're.
I don't know everything.
No, but certainly, if you don't know it, you know where to find the answer. And
yeah, that's true.
I think that's a lot of what people want to know is. I don't need a know-it-all, but I need somebody that is able to find the answer for me and willing to share it. And
sure.
And you've been that for me, and I appreciate it. And
good, not a problem, man.
And I know the first time we met in the flesh was at one of our club events. I'm one of the co-founders of Jeep Enthusiasts of Eastern Pennsylvania, and we had an event, and it really was Don, our co-host. We did a live broadcast from there, but it was our tech day, and you were able to come out and give an amazing demo um, for power tank. And I know a little bit later we're going to really dive in and get nerdy with power tank. But I wanted to throw that in as that was a physical meeting of ours for the first time. That was cool.
Yeah, definitely. And I wish that I could have been over to listen to you guys record. I could sort of hear it over the PA system, but I couldn't really get over that way. I was answering questions in between presentations, but it was a good time. A lot of people that were there that really want to know. They want to know more about their Jeep. They want to get out there. They want to, be prepared for every situation. And I think power tank is a big part of that for me. And it was interesting to be able to show off some of the amazing stuff it can do in an event setting like that, where it really is kind of a hands-on product. The more you get to use it, the more you like it.
Yeah. And for sure. And it was such a really cool event where we had the station set up and we were able to rotate through. It was pretty awesome. And maybe next year I'll worked out even more of the audio bugs and make it even a better podcasting event. But I thought we got time. We got time. I think I have like 360 more days. And if I don't leave my house, I'll have plenty more time.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm going to roll into our main topic because last week I was able to go to Tennessee and drive down to see my mom, and there was about 1,000 or so miles round trip, a little bit more than 1,000. And that can be a really long ways in a Jeep.
Absolutely.
And people ask me all the time, why do you take long trips in a Jeep? And well, I love my Jeep. I love it as a vehicle. I love it as a off-road toy. I love it as my midlife crisis automobile. I had them when I was younger, but it's nice to have it now. It gives me something to do, occupy my free time, and to focus in. So I wanted to kind of talk about long trips and how do you prepare for those. And so I'm going to go through some of the things that I like to take that, other than toothpaste and toothbrush, obviously. And then I know that I've seen the back of your Jeep and what some of the things that you take in prep. And so I'll throw that at you and let you talk a little bit about that.
You got it.
But some of the things that I take with me, I do have a trailer hitch mount rack that I use for my longer hauls. Just to carry stuff outside of the Jeep. Because now that I've put up a security 10-ounce cover in the back, it's kind of cut down a little bit of my storage and an effective storage, if you will.
Sure.
But so I use that exterior with a big bag back there for my cooler and some of the other bigger items, suitcase and stuff like that I don't really need to get to every day, but I throw it on there. But I think tire repair or some sort of emergency preparedness with that is important. I do have AAA, but I've also had AAA come up and look at my rig and go, I don't have anything to go underneath that thing. You know?
Yeah.
So I think it's good to have. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just saying it's tough. It is. It's like, and actually, both my brother and I years ago worked for a AAA towing company, and I remember the frustrations that came about when people would call to have a tire changed on a Jeep, and then you get there and you have your little dinky floor jack, and they've got 33-inch tires were big back then.
Right.
It's something like they don't necessarily have to do it. So
yeah, I had a real interesting situation when I pulled over and I helped out a Jeep, and all the jacks that I had in my Jeep, hers was just a stock Jeep, and so I couldn't even lift hers up to do the tire change because her little jack wasn't big enough, and whatever. So I called up AAA, and of course I had the spare off ready to go for them as soon as they got there and was able to jack it up. But he thought he saw my Jeep first, and he was like, "I don't have anything to lift that." And I was like, no, it's the stock one up here. I've already got it ready for you.
Yeah, I've got flashbacks from that,
So now I do carry jacks. I have my farm jack, my high lift farm jack mounted on the back. And then I do have a extremely tall barrel jack that I keep in my tote in the back, so I can help out those people that might not be as tall as me.
Sure.
So I have that in there as well, and of course tools, and that includes my battery operated impact wrench, which is pretty
Right.
awesome. I have blankets and water, because you never know when you're going to need water.
No, that's true.
I probably at some point should get some sort of jerry can or gas tank. I know when I went across country, I had a 5-gallon tank on the back on that rack. But I'd like something a little smaller and more convenient than that. Because
I'm a huge fan of Rotopacks, but like I'm speaking of trips to Tennessee, just a real quick segue on that. Years ago, Eric and I were driving down to Murfreesboro from Pennsylvania, and we were taking turns. He would nap out for a little bit while I drove, and then I'd snooze for a while he drove. And I think he had mentioned somewhere early in the trip that his fuel gauge wasn't exactly accurate.
yeah.
But I sure did run out, and we were probably 120 miles outside of Bristol.
Oh yeah.
So
not far away,
Virginia,
but
where there's
dead.
Not far away, but in that section where there's a big distance between exits.
Yeah.
And I sure did run it out of gas at about 1 o'clock in the middle of the night. And I don't even remember how we got out of that situation, but we did. I mean, we're still here. I don't remember the details of it, but I remember the frustration of running out and just needing a little bit more to get off to the next exit, which we did not have.
Yeah, in that range of the woods, I mean, you're lucky you didn't hear banjos playing.
Oh yeah, that is true.
I drove across country with my brother. I was moving to California the first time, and my brother was in the U-Haul with me, and ran out of gas just outside of Nashville near Lebanon. And
oh wow,
before the U-Haul even slowed down, he was already on the phone with all my friends, just hee-hawing, laughing at me, and and of course they brought out gas and helped me out, but
right.
Nothing like a brother to be an asshole to throw that in your face.
No, and Eric and I get along real well, but there's definitely been times that he's brought that up. Anytime anybody says anything about running out of gas, he reminds me that I did that. And that's got to be, at this point, that's got to be 15 years ago at least.
Yeah.
No, actually, probably even longer. It's probably been 20 years.
Oh, geez. Well, yeah, that was, I was going to say that's been, 2000-ish that happened with me. So yeah, 20 years ago. I'd like to think we've gotten wiser since then.
Nah.
I think we're just better at covering our ass.
When we run out of gas, it's in way more inconvenient places than a highway.
Right. And I think we're better at covering our ass now than we were then. Maybe being prepared. So yeah, and that Tennessee trip was pretty awesome as far as being able to drive down. There wasn't a lot of traffic going or coming. It was kind of nice. I love driving through the Shenandoahs. Is a beautiful drive.
Oh, yeah, it's gorgeous. Sure.
But my mom lives in East Tennessee, and while I was there, I always try to do at least one, hit the trail up in the mountains in East Tennessee, and beat around, get some mud on the Jeep, and it never lets me down. And it was good. I got to do some cool stuff, airing down and airing back up. And we use the power tank system with that, and we're going to do a huge product review a little bit later on that. But just being able to air down as quickly as I did, and very accurate with the deflators, and then being able to air back up in about 3 to 5 minutes total with all 4 tires was pretty amazing.
Oh, it is, because you'd be, with a compressor, you'd be way on. And it's, we go, as far as long trips go, I think the longest trip that I really go on I think it's just a shade under 500 miles. We go to Bethel, Maine every year. My brother and I have been doing that since 2016.
Oh, yeah.
Like late September, early October Jeep Jamboree that we like to go to. He went, I think, for the first time in maybe 2014.
Oh, wow.
and loved it and told me how amazing it was. And at the time, I think I didn't even have a Jeep at that point. But he told me how amazing the trails were, what a great trip it was. And I really I should do it with him. I was a hard sell on the Jeep stuff. I was into Volkswagens and Audis and
really?
cross racing and working on those for years. And he'd told me for a while, along with another friend of mine that actually has a Toyota, listen, man, if you come out with us in the woods and you go four-wheeling with us, you will sell your Volkswagen stuff.
All it takes is once.
You will change your hobbies. And I didn't believe him for a lot of years, but then he finally got me out there. It was actually a Jackson's Jeep Club day off in the dirt. Was the first time I ever went four-wheeling with him. And he wasn't kidding. I mean, I was on there, all the people that had ever gone, hey man, when you're ready to sell that, let me know. All those people got phone calls on the way back from Mouse Creek.
Wow. Perfect.
Trying to unload it. But this trip up to Bethel is really something special because it's a Jeep Jamboree. It's actually, it's just a great section of the world. It's right near Sunday River Ski Resort.
Oh yeah.
But there's Jeep Jamborees are opened up private trails. It's actually JJ USA is a huge company that puts these trips together. They're all over the country. They often sell out quite quickly when they go on sale in February, but they are, it's one of those things where it's like a trip of a lifetime, but you can do it every year.
Oh, okay.
They cost a little bit of money, but it's all inclusive. And Quadratec is a sponsor.
Oh, perfect.
But we go up to Bethel for these events, and some of the trails, they're just not open. They're open once a year for this actual event. You get a chance to ride on some really just amazing granite faces where you're going up this ledgy hill that you get to the bottom of it, and if you're close to the front of the pack, you're like, there's just no way. There's no way a Jeep is going up that. And I got to admit, the first time I went, I really doubted that the vehicle could pull me through where I was going. And then, you do it, and at this point I'm in a 2008 Rubicon with 35s on it. And I was really doubting my skills and my ability to get up this hill. And then some guy goes blasting up it in a 49 Willie. And he makes it look easy.
Yeah.
And I was struggling with it. It's one of my favorite things about that trip is at that Jamboree, it's like everybody pulls out their old stuff.
Right.
Their Jeeps they've had for years, or their Jeeps that they built just for those trails. And it's a very, it's not just TJs, YJs, JKs. It's stuff going, back into the 40s. If a guy was like, I'm sick of having to dig around in my trunk for my winch control. It'd be really great if it was up, by my winch. And he'll just, weld an ammo box to the front bumper.
Right.
So that he has a waterproof place to put his winch control. There's guys with Jeeps that they've converted everything south of the front seat into a huge waterproof toolbox to carry spare axles and drive shafts and every tool they could ever possibly use. And you look at my Jeep and you're like, wow, he's prepared for anything. I don't even scratch the surface of what these guys carry. I've seen them practice some real serious frontier medicine, getting Jeeps back on the road with, just coffee cans full of spare bolts and stuff you would never think to bring.
Right. And it's great. I love those atmospheres where you're out there and you're seeing what other people are doing. And, it's almost like learning by committee sometimes and seeing what other people are doing, seeing where the past, has made it to where our vehicles are today. Now, I might not want to take that 49 Willys on a 9-hour drive. I don't know how far is it up to Maine?
Oh, it's about 9 hours. I mean, the way we kind of go, so whenever we go north, we kind of hook it and go up the Northeast Extension, almost all the way to Scranton.
Just to go around the city.
A more westerly route because honestly, the times we're going, it doesn't make any sense to try to go anywhere New York, anywhere near New York. I don't like, if I have an opportunity, even if it costs me 45 minutes of time, if I have an opportunity to drive through the mountains rather than look at the refineries of North Jersey, I'm going to go a little bit west and go through the mountains. It's just,
Spoken like a true Jeeper. I love
absolutely.
that. So you have in the back of your Jeep, and it would, it doesn't do me any good on this trip, because really when I hit the trail, I'm out for, just a couple of hours by myself. I usually go early in the morning before my mom wakes up and spend a couple of hours out. But you have an oven, a refrigerator. Like I could live out of the back of your Jeep, I believe.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it's not, going back to what Don said about dual sport, it's not quite, it's definitely more geared towards rock crawling. You see the way it's put together. It's built for durability and being able to smash its way through rocks. But I put a lot of overlanding conveniences into it, and we do go camping with it a lot. And I have a trailer that I tow around. But yeah, I've got a Travel Buddy marine oven. It's I had to get it from Australia, but it's a little oven that gets almost up to 400 degrees Fahrenheit.
Wow. And
we use it to cook all sorts of things while we're out on the trail. So pretty much anytime you see me out in the woods, if we're out there and it was an intentional trip, I'm just not running from the law or whatever, we will have, White Castle cheeseburgers that you can get from the freezer section of the grocery store,
right.
Or we'll go to Trader Joe's and get like frozen mini bagel pizzas, or I'll make hot ham and cheese sandwiches, or, it's just, when you already have that and you've got an ARB fridge freezer that you can turn down to below freezing, all of your, freezer section small meals become camping food.
Right, right.
And it does draw a little more power, so I had to put a high output alternator in there just for that. But yeah, I mean, in addition to the oven and the refrigerator that are in there most of the times, I've set it up in such a way that I can take all that stuff out in a very short amount of time. If I need to, haul some cargo, or I don't want the extra weight, or I'm not going to be going on a trip for a while, I can pull the oven, I can pull the fridge freezer out. I can pull the power tank out, which is another advantage of that, to not have like a in-place onboard air system. All that stuff can come out. I had to move a generator a couple weeks ago, and it fit in the trunk exactly perfectly with that stuff removed, with the heat all the way back. But yeah, it's I really believe in having tools. My brother and I were not allowed to get our driver's licenses until we could change a flat tire, in 5 minutes. Our dad would time us with a stopwatch. We weren't allowed to take our driver's test until we could change that tire in 5 minutes or less without getting dirty. That was the important thing. So we were like a pit crew by the time we were done with that. And I remember a lot of failed attempts in the summer when I was 16 years old, before I was able to go and get my license. But he always instilled upon us a feeling that we needed to be there for ourselves more than depend on AAA.
Right.
So I've got in addition to the just basic jack, tire repair kit, inflation system, all that stuff. I've got all of that in there with hand tools as well. With the power tank now, I've added some air tools into the mix. I've got a 3/8" air impact gun and also a 1/2 inch for taking tires off and stuff.
Right.
Socket sets. It's a lot of weight, but it gives me peace of mind. And when I see somebody pulled over by the side of the road and they're in a bad spot, I'd say most of the time, unless I'm in a hurry on my way to something, I usually stop and help people out.
Yeah, I think that's great about our community, because I see that a lot, and I try to do the same thing. If the conditions are right, especially when there's weather related stuff and it's beyond people's control. I definitely want to try to help out. And I'm like you, I carry, the necessities for, my Jeep tool wise, to get me where I need to be. But it was so funny. I was at Coal Pit Crusade, this past year for autism. And it was,
I was at that too. And I didn't see you there, but I was at that.
So I was running with a group, and it was pretty cool. And
Yeah.
I broke my Jeep on the trail, and
Oh,
and it was funny because Don was no, it wasn't Don. It was my friend Mike was right behind me, and he's like, something's going on. And I could hear it, over the radio, and I pulled over, and it was literally just a shock. But as soon as somebody said something was broken, there were like 4 people with tools already in their hand in my Jeep before I even realized what was going on. I was like,
and
this is
there's
the
a guy
coolest.
with oil and an oil filter, like, hey, while we're working on it, you want me to just do this for you?
No,
Like,
right. I really felt like it's a NASCAR pit that
Yeah.
I had already pre-planned, and they knew at lap 200 I was coming in.
Yep.
And so they, I had the shock off, and everything was great. I was holding the shock and the bolts in my hand going, how did this get here so quickly?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
So I threw it in the back and, finished out the ride. But the people that are prepared make life better for everybody else. And,
Yeah.
and I think it's good to be prepared, but I have seen people that are prepared that kind of use it kind of in an asshole kind of way. I'm prepared. Sure. Why don't you have your stuff? Well,
yeah, no, that's not the way it should be. And I learned, and you learn through trial and error. So
yeah,
you got to see your shock taken off there, and you probably added a few bits to your kit.
Yep. For the next time.
For the next time. This is, going back a couple of years at this point in my 2008, I made a not so graceful line into Excelsior Swamp that I had taken before. This is an anthracite at AOAA.
Yep.
And I went in the same way that I normally do. And what I didn't know is that they'd had some military vehicles out there, and they'd really kind of hogged out everything that was covered by the water.
Oh yeah,
at that point. And I went into this little pit that it's not usually that bad. I was trying to actually get up and around another Jeep with a photographer to take pictures of it. And I kind of like just went over this little ledge, and it dropped down lower than I thought it should once we got into the water, and kind of tilted off to the right. And then before I knew it, I had actually sucked water into the engine.
Oh yeah.
And this was not like a high RPM water crossing or anything. I kind of went off into this thing, and I just got stuck in some really sticky clay and sludge that was at the bottom of this swamp. And, we pulled it out. We were probably there disabled for 45 minutes, but the guys that I was with, we took all the spark plugs out. I had water and mud in the engine.
Was this where you learned the air compressor trick?
Right. Yes. That's where I learned that, like having compressed air on the trail would have been a good thing to have and not have it.
Yeah.
So what we ended up doing was taking, like little 16-ounce bottles of water that you buy at, wherever, Wegmans or whatever, and poked a hole in the top of it. And we're using those as like a mini pressure washer to try to squirt water into the cylinders that have the spark plugs removed. And then we crank the engine over to spit all this sludge out of the engine.
Ugh.
Then someone else has my intake system, the whole tube and filter and airbox and everything over there, and they're trying to rinse it out with water. So after that, after we, we're resorting to using these little small bottles. Now I always carry about 4 gallons of water with me, and I have a compressed air solution that allows me to clean that stuff out better. I'm not doing that again. I don't go to Excelsior Swamp. I was kind of like goaded into doing it again at the Coal Mountain Jeep Jamboree the next year, and all my buddies are like, we're going back to Excelsior, buddy. What do you feel about that?
Yeah.
And I went through just the edge of it, and my cooling fan died.
Oh,
so it was like that swamp is cursed for me.
Yeah, don't go back.
I'm never going back.
Yeah, don't go back.
That's it. But yeah, you learn that stuff through trial and error. You figure out that you need some extra tools that you don't have, and then that's how you end up with 700 pounds of stuff in your Jeep.
I was going to say, you've added 4 gallons of water of weight. You've added all these tools, and your Jeep's already heavy enough, and we just keep adding more and more, and plus all the steel that we add to the front and back, and 35s and 37 inch tires. It all adds up. But
it sure does.
Well, and it all adds up. I came back. I made a big trip last year from here to Cupertino, California. Um,
Yeah.
I did both directions. On the way out, I had 33-inch, 32-inch ATs, all terrains, and the drive out was a lot smoother. While I was out there, I went to 35-inch mud terrain, so it was a little bit louder and a little bit rougher on the way back. And the Jeep definitely was heavier. I could tell the difference between the two tire setups. It was pretty amazing. While on the way
Yeah.
out there, I did every chance that I got. I pulled off and saw something interesting or took the Jeep off roading. I got a couple um, badge of honor badges on the way out, and then on the way back,
That's awesome.
did the same thing. So it was one of the nice thing to break up the trip, but it was
Sure.
literally 9 days of driving out. Um,
Ooh.
yeah, it was crazy, but I got to stay with friends of mine, see people. My brother joined me for part of the trip out, and when I make that long drive, I do it in small bursts. I'll do
Sure.
an 8 to 12 hour day, and then the next day maybe I won't do any. I'll have a 0 day that I just play around, or 2 or 3 days that are 8 or 9 hour days in a row, and then I'll have a 0 day that I can play around. And it was great to do that. I had the cooler in the back seat with plenty of food, and I didn't have to stop except for fuel.
Sure.
And on the way out, I was getting 17, 18 miles to the gallon. On the way back, I was getting 15 to 16 because of the different size tires. So that made a difference. But it was great to be able to.
We're essentially driving a dumpster with wheels. So expecting great fuel economy is just get that out of your head.
Yeah. Oklahoma City was crazy. People complained about hood flutter, and I was like, that's cute, but it's not really that big a deal. But the 30-mile-an-hour crosswinds in Oklahoma, that hood was moving everywhere but off. That was when I locked that thing down and got new latches when I got out to California. It was crazy.
Yeah, you get you don't realize, but as that rubber fatigues, it really does. I mean, it's like even just driving between here and Westchester on 202. I had probably like a 30-mile-an-hour headwind, and I'm going 60 miles an hour, and then all of a sudden you can see the hood moving and slowing the Jeep down 5 miles an hour.
Yeah.
When it does it, I'm like, okay, it's time for new ones. I mean, yours is relatively new compared to mine. I mean, we're splitting hairs over a few years here, but when you have a Jeep that gets to be about 5 years old, that's almost when you start to need to really look for a solution, because those things are stretched out, no longer happy about life.
Yeah, for sure. And it was for real. And my brother was a little freaked out about it. And driving a Jeep is bad enough, but driving a Jeep in real wind, we had the steering wheel cut into the wind while the hood's flattering. Yeah, it wasn't good.
Right. Yeah, you just feel like you're flying a bomber and everything's falling apart.
Exactly. One of the things that I didn't prepare at all on that trip was for any kind of tire disaster. And I use the word disaster because if I'd had a flat tire on the way out, you're in the middle of nowhere, 8 hours between exits out in the Southwest. It was a little hairy, and it would have been great if I had the power tank system that I took this past weekend and really put through the paces. And for I'm going to give my brief description of what the power tank system is. Then I'm going to just hand it over to you and probably ask a couple questions because you're the expert on this. And what the power tank system is, for those that don't know, is it's basically a cylindrical tank, very much like a scuba tank or some kind of tank like that, with regulators, carry handles, and it's built and designed for this activity. Really quality regulators. I can't believe how nice all the knobs and the actual words are escaping me now. But what do you turn the air on?
The
valves
valve on the top and the regulator. Yeah, the regulator knob. They really, every single part. They've gone through so many generations of those parts now. They have fine-tuned it to just make everything precise and amazing. Would you say that's fair? It's like every part is as nice as it feels like it possibly could be. But then
I've never
they
held
come out with a new one.
Yeah. And I've done scuba. I've actually I was a certified diver, but I've never had regulators as precise and as nice as that. And the valve, they moved with such precision. And that was to me so impressive. And to just be able to air down and then air back up with confidence, going from 35, 36 psi all the way down to 15. That was no problem. And then popping right back up, it was like 35 seconds a tire. I couldn't believe how easy it was to go from 15 to 36 instantly. And you're holding it down, and I was expecting to release and see 3 pounds gain. No, I jumped from 15 all the way up to 27 in almost no time flat. And it was blown away.
It actually, the power tank actually puts it back in faster than the JT Brooks deflators drop it.
I think you're right about that. I mean, the regulator is 250 psi maximum pressure, 45 cubic feet per minute, which definitely throws that air as quickly as you can imagine. I don't even know if I would want it to go that much faster.
No, and actually the one that I have in my Jeep, you use the 250 CFM, or I'm sorry, the 250 psi regulator. Yeah. The one that I have in my Jeep is the 400.
Oh wow!
So it goes up to 400 psi, and then I've got those monster valve tires to make it even like a. I mean, the bottleneck when you're inflating yours is the factory valve stem.
Yep.
Yeah, it's very small, and the one that's on mine is, I don't even know the percentage, but it's got to be twice as big or twice as much surface area going in. When I crank that up to 400 psi, and I'm inflating a 37, I go down to like 8 for my trail pressure and go back up to 33. So you can imagine how long that would take if you used the compressor.
Yeah.
On a 37-inch tire, but it's like 2 psi a second. Of inflation time, which is just absurd.
I remember you showing me you went down to 0 almost instantly with those stems, and then was back up to 33, 34 pounds in no time flat. I mean, it was just, I watched your Jeep go down and visibly watched it go right back up.
Well, I don't think you get the air out any faster if you stabbed it with a knife. the deflators that are built into the power tank monster valves are just, there's like 6 holes that the air comes out of. You just hear it rushing out. You can actually watch the pressure drop and watch it go back in, rather than having something buzzing around on the floor, rattling all over in the gravel, inflating it, taking 6 minutes. You're back up and running in like 30 seconds. It's crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy. And when you're doing it and you're handling this, I did have the one I was using in the speed bag with the 10-foot coiled hose, and so I was able just to walk it from one tire to the next, and as quick as I possibly could, those were filled. And I think back of all the times that I've waited in line at AOAA, which I'm so thankful they have those compressors on site with 4 or 5 different compressors and hoses, and 4 or 5 Jeeps can air up. I'm thinking of all the time that I've spent actually waiting in line for that, and while one person was airing up, I would have already aired up all 4 tires before they got one done.
Yep.
It's so impressive.
How did you? So we both went to the same event before we knew each other, but Coal Pit Crusade last year.
Yeah.
They brought in some generator compressor trailers that were gas powered, and that's how everybody was airing up, because they don't have air stations at that park.
And they were charging people for that.
Were they really?
Yeah. And they,
wow.
Yeah, it was several dollars to air up. I actually drove, 10 miles or so to a gas station.
Oh.
Yeah. On
18
pounds.
That's a harrowing trip right there.
Yeah. Missing a shock and running on 18 pounds. Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, I've gone to Roush Creek and had their compressor be dead at the end of the day, and this was a few years ago before anybody even had like a compressor, and we had to drive all the way down to that Exxon that's right off of 81, I think.
Yep.
So we've all had to drive there, and then not only do you have to go in and get cash out of the ATM if you don't have cash,
and then get change.
Then beg the register guy to give you some change.
Yeah.
Then you have to go out there, and at that point, I mean, you're in an area where a lot of people were at Roush Creek that day, and everyone had the same problem.
Yeah.
And so we waited at that air station, and each one of us had to pay for 2 shots of air essentially, which was, I think, $1.50 or whatever.
Yep.
But, in addition to having to wait an hour to be able to use it. So by the time we got done airing up, I mean, it was like well into the night. It was like 9 o'clock at night by the time we got finished.
Yeah.
But I had the power tank at the Coal Pit Crusade, and I saw a guy with a new Gladiator that was over there. And so you've got the one that you're using is a 10-pounder with a 10-foot hose.
That's right.
I have the 15-pounder with the 400 psi regulator and a 30-foot hose. So I have it hard mounted in the trunk. I can reach all of my tires with the hose. But I saw a guy with a little 18-volt Ryobi like pistol grip tire inflator that you'd use to like inflate a bike or a volleyball or something. And he's trying to use it to inflate his Gladiator tires, and just the factory Gladiator tires. He hadn't done anything yet, but he was a new Jeep owner, and he figured, if I'm going to take some air out, this is how I put it back in. Well, let's say you put a few pounds back in, but if you're trying to do 10 or 12 pounds in every single tire with large volume tires, he kept overheating it.
I was going to say he had to stop and let it cool down, didn't he?
No, and we're standing over there. We're talking about where we're going to go get some food because we're already all aired up. We had 3 Jeeps there, and we all used the power tank to inflate all 3 Jeeps worth of tires, and we're all back up and running. This guy was still running this little Ryobi thing, trying to get air in probably his first tire.
Yeah.
And we're talking about where we're going to go and get a bite to eat on the way home. So I drove over to the guy and I'm like, hey bud, I don't know you, but like, I can't watch you suffer anymore. let me set you up here. And I just, inflated, his other 3.5 tires to get him back up on the road. But I mean, that's the kind of thing, like if you had 4 friends and you all went out 4-wheeling and you're the only one with an onboard air system, you're going to be waiting, an hour to get everybody's stuff inflated.
Yeah.
And we were done, 3 Jeeps in 15 minutes. And then I went on to like help a guy out that I didn't know.
Right.
And it's, it does have a lot of volume. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people don't realize is that it's liquid CO2 in there. It's not just compressed gas. It's not a air tank that you fill at home with a compressor. And that's the most commonly answered question. And when I was doing the demonstration at the Jeep Group Tech Day, a lot of people would walk up and say, so I fill this with my compressor at home and then I go out? I'm like, no, that's not exactly it. I'll explain it in more detail. And the other thing was, right in the center of that table, I had the ARB Twin air compressor, which is a $500 plus compressor. Before you even buy a mount, it's just as expensive as a power tank.
And that was a system I was looking at, and putting in, because I had sworn that I was going to do onboard air.
And it takes up a lot of space. It has a lot of moving parts. It has a lot of electrical components. And it has a compressor that's going to eventually fail. It's going to wear out.
It's going to make noise, and it's all those things. And I know with the power tank, it is a finite amount of times that you can fill up a tire, because it is one tank, but that can always be refilled. And I think you and I've done the math on, the 10-pound doing my tires. I probably had 7 full tire changes, with that one.
Yeah, no, I think it was, so you've got 18, so it was a little bit off, but if you went up 20 PSI, on like a 17-inch, 37-inch tire like I
Yeah.
have. If you went up 20 psi, which is pretty, close to what I do, with a 15-pound tank, you can fill 13 tires.
Okay.
And you can fill them in 45 seconds.
Yep.
So it's really, and that's just with the standard valve stems. Obviously, it's a little bit more. But what you have to look at is because it's stored in liquid form in there and it's scavenging the vapors off the liquid, and that's how the regulator works. The storage pressure is between 500 and 800 psi. So when you actually go to use the inflator to inflate the tire, it's pulling those vapors off, and the liquid stuff that's in there, it never really drops the storage pressure until it's empty.
Right.
So
it's
if
done.
you have a compressor and you're slowly inflating a tire and it gets down to like 50% and the compressor kicks back on to refill the tank, you kind of got to wait, or you're going to be sitting there forever while it just tries to fill it with the regular hose pressure.
Right.
The power tank doesn't drop in pressure. So the first tire you fill is just as fast as the last tire you fill.
Right.
And that's a big deal. I mean, a 10-pounder like you had, imagine if you were driving around with a Jeep with a 400-gallon air tank compressed to 150 psi.
Yeah.
That's the amount of volume that you have.
Wow.
You can't really carry that. If you had a little 4-gallon tank, which is really the largest one that people are fitting on Jeeps, you are, one 1/100th of what the capacity in a 10-gallon air tank is.
Yeah.
It's the science and the math are kind of a tricky thing to get acclimated to. I wrote an article on Quadratec about this that kind of breaks everything down. I think it ended up being about 11 pages typed, and that's after I cut out a lot of unnecessary stuff. Yeah, it's a long article, but it's a good read. If you're interested at all in putting an onboard air system in your Jeep, it's called 7 Reasons I Bought a Power Tank for My Jeep instead of a compressor. And the easiest way to find it, just type 7 Reasons Power Tank Quadratec into Google, and it'll pop you right in there.
Yeah, such a great article.
It's it's got so much info in it. And when I sent it back to the guys at Power Tank to let them know, they said it was one of the most comprehensive gatherings of information on CO2 systems that they'd ever read. And when they do only that, I take that as a huge compliment.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah.
I mean, your writing is fantastic. If you folks need to check out his writing on Quadratec, it's spectacular. I'm all for it. Writing.
There's a website redesign that's apparently in the pipes right now, and I don't know what this global pandemic is going to do to delay or expedite that. I don't know how that's going to go, but there's a website thing where it's going to be easier to get to the content. It's going to be easier to get to the videos and the writing that we do. Right now, the portal for the writing is almost always on Facebook, where we'll several times weekly we'll post an update on Facebook saying like, hey, here's some information. Have you thought about, one of the most recent articles I wrote was about just basic 101 level stuff for guys that want to work on their Jeep in their driveway.
Right.
Or girls, guys or girls,
Yep.
could be anyone. But remembering to safely use jack stands to support the load when you lift it up off the ground, wearing eye protection where necessary, just stuff like that, just basic stuff where
we all need those reminders.
Do it in my whole life.
Yeah, we all need those reminders, even if it's we've been doing it for a while. Sometimes it's good to get those reminders. Safety comes first, and then because we sometimes just want to jump in there. I do want to address. There are some people asking, where do you get that refilled? And I believe somebody said it like a beer distributor, or there's also fire safety locations that you can get it.
Yep, places that service fire suppression systems will be able to fill you up with liquid CO2. You need to call around in your area, but we're very fortunate. I mean, your Jeep club is kind of focused in the Delaware Valley and the Lehigh Valley. Right around the Allentown Bethlehem Easton Airport, there's a place called Kissler O'Brien that will transfill CO2 for you, a tank of any size up to 20 pounds while you wait. They're super nice people.
Oh,
I
cool.
walked in there for the first time and they're like, wow, this is shiny. And, like the first time I got them filled, that's where I went. And I brought the tanks in there, and I think I was out the door in 15 minutes with two 15-pound tanks filled. And then in Bluebell, which isn't too far for a lot of people, there's a place called John S. Posen that's a propane distributor that also does nitrogen, oxygen, CO2 and a bunch of other stuff. But those aren't even the only, I found two really good places that I was happy with that were geographically appropriate for my needs. So I kind of stopped looking at that point, but I know there's other places. One of the other things that you can do with a power tank, and we call this the ugly tank setup, is most beverage distributors, they don't fill on site because they don't have CO2 filling stuff because of liability reasons and all that. So typically CO2 systems for beer taps and stuff use a 5-pound, a 10-pound, or a 20-pound. And most of those beverage distributors do a exchange tank program. Where if you have a kegerator at home that has a 5-pound CO2 tank and you run out, well, you're going to the beverage distributor anyway to get a keg of beer.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, if you're an American, I guess, like you're buying beer in quantity. So you're going in there and like you can exchange that tank for one that they have on site that's already filled. Welding supply places are the same way. A lot of them, including air gas, they used to fill on site for a lot of different gases, but now they typically do all the transfilling at a centralized station.
Okay.
So they're exchange only. But Kistler O'Brien has, I think there's 4 locations in our area, in the Mid-Atlantic area.
Oh, cool.
Where it's Allentown. There's one in Westchester on Saunders Lane that I talked to them about that. The first time I went to the one in Allentown because I was up there.
Right.
But in Westchester, right near Quadratec, they will take your tank, whether it's a power tank or, like an ugly tank setup. And the reason I call it ugly tank is because it's an exchange tank you don't actually own. You take that tank and you drop it off at the Westchester location, and that day they will put it on a stake body truck, strap it to the side of the truck, and they will take it to their transfilling location in Allentown, and they'll bring you back the tank either the next day or later on that afternoon, filled up. And it costs the same as if you went to the one in Allentown.
Okay.
They have a location in Reading and one other place. So like there's a lot of options there, but if you're more into the convenience of having like a 10-pound tank, 15 pounds an oddball size, and that's what I use for my larger tires. That's like 35 and up should use a 15-pounder or a 20. But you can take a 10-pound tank and just go into air gas or go into like Robert's Oxygen and go, hey, this CO2 tank is empty, and they will just give you another one that is an exchange tank that's filled up and ready to go, and you're in and out of there in 2 minutes.
Wow.
It costs a little more, but the advantage to that is you never have to have the tank hydro tested, because every 5 years, any kind of compressed gas cylinder needs to be retested to make sure it's not leaking.
Right.
One of the advantages to the power tank system is if your power tank bottle, if you have one of their powder coated power tank branded bottles, if that ever fails hydro test, they mail you a new one.
Oh, wow.
Which is part of their warranty.
Yeah, so their warranty's great.
Their warranty's great, and I've talked to them at length about the ins and outs of the warranty, and you're very well protected if you buy a system from them. It is intended to be a system that lasts you the rest of your life.
Wow.
Not just a couple of years like an ARB compressor or any other brand. Not to harp on ARB, but ARB is kind of like the gold standard of compressors as far as an electrical compressor goes. But they do have a shelf life.
Yeah.
And the power tank system having no electrical components at all, and not a lot of moving parts, and a lot of really durable, over-engineered situations, built into it. It's not going to freeze clog because of the rapid release of gas that can, if you have a cheap regulator, it can freeze. And a lot of the early power tank systems were built that way. And they go, well, there's got to be a better solution to this. And they never, ever stop asking that question.
Yeah, I think that's important for a company to, really always challenge themselves.
Exactly. And, you know this from working for a company that's really into technology. And another in another aspect of it, but like, don't rest on your laurels. Don't go, yep, we already built the best system in the world. That's good enough. Every year they look at it and go, how can we make this better? How can we make this better and still keep it at a price point where it's affordable? I mean, power tank systems, I mean, just to get this right out in the open, prepare to spend about $500, you know, for an entry level power tank system. There's a lot of options. There's cheaper ways you can do it with those exchange tank stuff, but prepare to spend about $500 compared to a compressor system. The compressor alone is $500.
I was going to say it's in the neighborhood, but it is a sticker shock when you first look at it. But
sure.
but I think with what you get, it's worth it. You know, just like everything else, the more you look into it, it's worth the money. Absolutely.
Yeah, if you end up with a compressor, you know, a $500 compressor, then you got to buy a $100 mount, and then you got to buy, you know, some way to get the air to where you need it, you know, because you're not going to want to like plug a hose in under your driver's seat where this thing is buzzing around all day.
Yeah.
You know, you'll probably want to put in, you know, air lines to the front and an air line to the back. By the time you get done adding all that stuff, you're close to $1,000.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you could, for $1,000, you could have a power tank set up with 2 bottles, you know, and then you don't really need to worry about running out because you've always got a full one. You just swap the bottle out. That's what we've come to do. All the guys at Quadratec that either had compressors or were going to put a compressor in their Jeep have switched over, and we're, you know, as you know, the guys that go four-wheeling a lot from Quadratec, I think we own probably 6 power tank systems, maybe 7.
Yeah. Well, I'm a convert. No matter what, going forward, my air of choice is going to be power tank. So I appreciate Quadratec and Power Tank allowing us to really dive into this and really review it.
Use that demo tank, man. And I set that one up to show to Jeep Jamboree guys because I think that's like the ideal rescue tank size.
Yeah,
like most of those guys, they trailer their Jeeps to the event anyway, so they don't really need it for their own personal inflation needs. They don't have to air up to street pressure at the end of the day, but you can end up with a participant in the Jeep Jamboree that you know, they aired their tires down to 10 because their buddy told them to do that, and then they go over an obstacle and lose a bead.
Right.
Well, you're back in the woods and you need a large volume of compressed air. A power tank can reseat a lost bead using only the power tank and a jack up to 46 inches.
Oh, wow.
Like, you know, and nobody's running 46s and not bead locks. But,
right,
but the point is, as far as a rescue device goes, you can take it in that speed bag like you used in the video. You can take it and you can carry it, you know, to the Jeep that actually needs help.
Yep.
And sometimes if you've ever been to Anthracite and gone to Barney Rubble, that trail, we had 2 people on that Coal Mountain Jeep Jamboree. We had 2 people that lost beads all the way down in the bottom of that. At the time, the lower entrance was closed. So if you had to drive a Jeep to them to reseat their bead, you're looking at probably about a 5-minute or 7-minute, you know, if you're going pretty fast, trek down there to help this guy. And he was the last one in the group.
Yeah.
And then once you get down there, then you got to jack it up. You got to put a strap around it. You got to compress the tire a little bit, and then put a compressor on there and hope you can get a little bit of air in there to reseat the bead. With a power tank, it's like instant. So, you know, all these things I kind of was looking for. I had all these problems in the woods, like we were talking about earlier. I had all these problems in the woods, and I had to look at what was going to solve all my needs going forward that would fix all these problems that I didn't have. I had serious deficiencies of what I carried with me to be able to solve these problems. And power tanks systems checked every single box.
Yeah,
you know, reseating beads, doing like, you know, a highway tire repair if I ended up getting a flat when I'm on my way to the Poconos, running air tools in the woods. Those electrical impact guns like you have, they're good.
Yeah.
But I've seen a lot of times where they won't bust a bolt loose that's been on for a while.
Yeah,
and if your battery starts to go flat, I mean, great if you have a spare battery, you have a charger or whatever, but when it's like you need to get it done fast, an Ingersoll Rand half-inch air impact gun that you would use in your garage is going to take that thing off every single time.
Yeah,
it's not going to. You're not going to end up with a stuck bolt.
Air is definitely better. Definitely better.
It is. I mean, and the electrical stuff has come a long way in the last couple of years, but it does have its drawbacks.
It does. Man, and I appreciate your expertise on Power Tank, and I can't thank Power Tank and Quadratec and you for making that available to me, so I can make that video. I can get out there and talk about it. I'm sold. Done. Fill in the blanks there.
I want to see what Don thinks about it, because Don's kind of a numbers guy like I am. He really gets into the technical aspect of stuff.
Yeah.
I want to see how it works on his trip. So
yeah, he'll have fun with it for sure. No doubt about it. Man, I can't believe our time is coming. This has been awesome. I've loved the whole live aspect of it and being able to interact and see people as they're responding to us live. And but wow, I've loved this. This has been a lot of fun. And thanks, Scott, for coming on.
Not at all.
Where can people see you out there in the wild? Where can they find you?
So, I'm moving around a lot, so it's kind of hard to find me sometimes. And depending on what kind of Jeep you have, I go kind of deep into the parks and deep into the woods, so that might be tricky. So the best way, I think, is probably online.
Yeah.
So like on Instagram, I'm Rattler Jeep, RATTLERJEEP. That's my blue Jeep, hashtag Team Blue, I think I'm supposed to say. Is that how that works?
Yeah, but yours is like a dark, nice blue, beautiful blue.
Right. It's a 4-stage, it's called True Blue, and it is a super, super dark blue that I get people who have been wheeling with me 3 times and go, I thought your Jeep was black. And to add to the confusion, my old one was. So it's my brother's got a hydro blue that Jeep is a monster. He's on 1 tons and 40s with rock crawler coilover suspension. So we both have blue Jeeps. So we're never going to agree with you on the red versus blue thing.
That's fair.
The important thing to remember, though, is when we go to red versus blue, if we look at the Civil War, I think we know who won that one, Terry.
Yeah, we've had that discussion for a while. I love it. Even now at this late time, I've got the guy who introduced us, Ryan, just joined us, and I just wanted to shout out, hi, Ryan.
Hey, Ryan.
And all the way from Texas, Wacy. And it's so cool to see you guys. And people know where they can find us. We can be found on Apple Podcast, Google Play, and Spotify. I've kind of said, I'm an Apple guy, but I've made it available for everybody, so you don't have to be an Apple guy. Cough, cough, nod, nod. Yeah. You can just go.
Looking at my Android phone and my Surface tablet here. Yeah.
I know. You text me in green. I don't know what that means. The JeepLifePodcast.com. You can download straight from there. Instagram at JeepLifePod. On Facebook, if you're watching us, you've definitely found the link for Jeep Life Podcast. And we do have a YouTube channel, so I probably am going to put this video up on YouTube as well. If you just search for Jeep Life Podcast, it'll show up. We are adding more and more content. The Power Tank trail review that I did is on there as well. And Scott, I can't thank you enough for coming in and hanging out with me. I appreciate it a lot.
No problem at all. With the Quadratec stuff, like and subscribe to the Quadratec channel, if you don't mind a couple shameless plugs here.
Oh yeah, throw them out there.
My brother handles the video department there, and he and Rob do a lot of great content. So check that out. And for now, the Speakeasy Backdoor Secret Knock is quadratec.com/C as in cat for the Quadratec channel, and you can see all the content in there. Cool. And that's great. Yeah, thanks for having me, Terry. I really appreciate it.
All right, everybody. Thanks a lot for joining us, and we'll see you soon.